What's going on? I
How
got
are
my
you, brother?
buddy Nick on today. Dude, we just met recently, but I feel like such a great connection with you. We were talking just before we got started. Already have a lot of similarities and things. So, what do you got going on today, man?
Not much, man. I was excited for this call. I'm always looking to connect with like-minded people. So, I mean, yeah, like you said, I just and us on our talks beforehand, just and over the past couple of weeks, it just seems like you're a good person to meet. And I was watching some of your content, and you're asking all the questions that I have these conversations regularly. So, like, this is awesome. Just connect. Humbled by it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, dude. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know we're right around the holiday at the time of this recording. So there's a lot of busy stuff, clients, personal things. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to kind of hop on.
No, my
Um,
pleasure, man.
so would you mind giving a little background about yourself, who it is you help, what it is you do, kind of thing like that?
Yeah, so my name is Nick Manente. I am a physical therapist in New York. Mostly work in the city, in Manhattan. I just left my full-time job in November, which was at Mount Sinai Hospital. I was there for 11 years. And over the course of those 11 years, I was seeing patients privately in home. And that started off as like a little side practice to supplement my income. And my wife and I, then friend, she was kind of doing the same thing. She worked at the hospital as well. But then once we got together and actually got married, she left the hospital and she was there for 13 years. And then it kind of grew into this full time practice gradually. So I just left and jumped ship from the hospital full time back in November. And now
Mm,
I'm full time in the practice. So it is going well, thankfully, going into the new year. And we're looking to scale going forward.
nice, man. I love that. Love to hear that. Congratulations on the success so far, and
Thank you.
looking
Thank
forward to
you.
hearing a lot more. Now, let me ask you.
For,
So your wife left the hospital first, and then how
yes.
long until you had left? Because I know you left in November. You just said.
Yeah, we had about a year and a half in between, almost 2 years
Okay.
for her. So it was a transition. It was a tough transition for both of us because you're part of this major hospital system, major corporation, safe, secure job, and benefits and all that stuff. And then it's like, when do you take that leap? When are you comfortable with what you have to actually make that decision to say, oh, you know what, I think it's time. And it was a discussion for both of us to have because when I was still there, we had benefits because we're married, right? Um,
Hmm.
and that was a nice cushion for her as well. But then to make that adjustment, because it's just a numbers game, you have to be comfortable with your resources that you have and your referral sources. So making sure that we can have the current patients that we have on program and clients, and as well as the referral sources that they're going to keep coming in, and there's no loss of that. And then that scarcity mindset kind of creeps up on you, which is something we definitely had to push through.
Yeah, I love that you touched on scarcity mindset. I'd love to dive into that in a little bit. I'm just going to write a note for that. But I want to ask, what was it kind of like? Because yeah, you had to wait for the correct financial moment. But what about scheduling wise, like workload wise? Because I imagine that you are juggling both because you didn't just go straight from hospital into the private practice, right? There had to have been some sort of a blend to kind of transition.
Yeah, kind of. What happened was, I believe I'm a big believer that everything happens uh, for you rather than to you.
Mm,
So I actually hurt my shoulder I was training for the Spartan Ultra. It's a 31-mile race. And we were renovating a house as well. And between all that stuff, it was just a lot of trauma to my shoulder. So I injured my shoulder and I was out of work from, I guess I went out around August 1st. And it was just this, I couldn't work at the hospital because it was a lot of heavy lifting. I work with mostly, I specialize in spinal cord injuries. So most of my patients are paralyzed in some way or another. A lot of
mm,
heavy lifting, you're transferring them out of bed. Um, and that became a very non-feasible thing to patient population to work with in the acute stages. So it kind of just showed me like because I was still able to work a little bit in my side job, right? I could still see patients that were completely independent and it's just me telling them what to do rather than doing the heavy lifting. So I started
mhm.
transitioning to doing that a little bit more while I was out of work. And then I got a lot of time to reflect, and I just said, well, like, what am I doing here? And the hospital was in the point of making a major transition to relocating. And I just was like, you're going to go back in, let's say, a couple of months after this injury is done with, and hopefully you'll be in tip top shape, you'll be ready to rock. But then what? Like, you're going to relocate. You don't, and I was never my intention to go to that new location, just because it
Hmm.
was a lateral move for me. And I'm very much of a growth mindset person. I was always looking for, like, what's the next step from here? Um, so it just, for me, it was about volume. And before I got hurt, I was struggling to keep up with my side business, which was my wife's full-time business. I'm trying to help her out. And also it was just it was difficult because I'm at the hospital until like 3:30. So you only have so much time after work before it's feasible for you. You want to get home, get dinner, or whatever. So I only had like 2 or 3 hours to see people. So it could be anywhere from one client to three clients. And that's great, but it was just like, after a while you just get burnt out. Like, this isn't feasible to do long term.
Hmm.
So once I got hurt, it was just like, okay, now what? Can you schedule 5 or 6 clients a day? Can you do more? What's practical? What do you like? Feel it out. And as I started to learn that, and that was, as you referred to, the transition, that was kind of the transition process for me, unintentionally, because it was just like this injury led to this knowledge of, like,
Hmm.
this experience can teach you something. Like, what are you learning from this? And for me, it was just a good reason to take the leap. It showed me that, this is. I was talking to her, and we said, this is good. Like, why are you going to go back? If you're going to bet on yourself now, it's probably the best situation.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot. I'm glad you made that leap. It sounds like you're happy about that. I'm sure a lot of your clients are also happy too. Um, and and you sound like you spent a good time thinking about that because it's not an easy decision.
Sure.
And I want to ask you about your reflection and how what kind of brought on to that, because most people when they get injured they just kind of chill out. They're not necessarily looking forward into the next steps and getting back. Most people just kind of chill out and wait until they're better and go back to work. But you were proactive, thinking ahead, like, hey, is this an opportunity? How is things looking in the future? And I want to just ask you, have you always been somebody who looks forward, like looks internally to look forward kind of thing?
Um, yeah, yes, I would say, I'm more of, I have to slow myself down intentionally, and that's not something I'm good at doing. I'm always go, go, go. I'm constantly moving. And that injury kind of forced me to take a step back, because I was most of my time was spent at the hospital. So if I'm waking up in the morning, I get up at 4:30, I'm in a cold plunge, I have this whole morning routine, and then I work out, and then I'm rushing to the hospital. I'm there 7:30 to 3:30, and then I'm nonstop in the afternoon. I'm on a city bike. I'm racing from client to client, and it was just nonstop. So having that chunk of the morning where I was like 7:30 to 3:30, I have free now. Like, oh yeah, I could see one or two clients in there, but then even if I do that, that's only, 2 to 3 hours with transportation. So it gave me a lot of time to think about, is this really what I want to do? Is this the risk I want to take? And right now the answer is yes. And I said it then, and right now it hasn't changed. So I'm very happy that I did it going into the new year. Um, it's not something that was easy for me. I had great relationships with the most amazing people there, not only patients, but colleagues, friends for years, that I know these are friendships that'll go forever. But eventually,
Mhm.
you have to make a decision for yourself and your family.
Yeah, so true, so true. Got to prioritize those. And I want to dive into talking a little more about the mindset. I know you had said scarcity mindset previously, and it was kind of creeping in once you were on full time with the private practice. But then you also said you've always been a growth mind kind of person. So explain to me how both of those kind of like worked simultaneously in your head, and explain a little bit on that and your take on
Yeah,
scarcity mindset.
sure. So scarcity mindset, in my personal experience, was more so, I didn't grow up from a financially well-off family. My family was lower middle class. They didn't have much financial education. I had the best childhood on the planet. Like, I am so overwhelmingly grateful for what I did have. I had the best parents in the world. I still have the best parents in the world. I'm very grateful for them. But finances weren't a thing that they were introduced to in terms of financial management. So that became a very strong focus. My parents are actually divorced, but they're best friends, and that became a very
Interesting.
strong focus. Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic, but it works. And they were divorced when I was like 12, so I just became hyper focused. It was around money was one of the main reasons I was told at that age. So I think I
Mhm.
kind of focused on that as a kid, as like, oh, I got to make money because then it sets you up for not only your family, but whatever you want to get in life, your goals. It just makes things easier. It's not the answer to everything, but it definitely makes things a lot easier. And
Mhm.
I remember I was a waiter, and I was going to PT school. I was applying rather, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, "Yo, come over for the weekend. I'm staying at my uncle's house, whatever." And I went up to Armonk, and I drove onto this property, and I was just like, "Where the hell am I?" Like it was a massive like estate, and I knew people who were wealthy, but I grew up in the Bronx, so like my definition of wealth, it was very different. With nice houses in the Bronx versus nice houses in Armonk, there's a polar opposite difference there in terms of the amount of property. So I kind of drove onto this property, and I was like, there's two houses on this property and massive houses. And I'm just looking around, and I'm like, where the hell am I? I was never saw anything like that in my life. So the next day I was working with my friend after we had a good time at his house. There's pools, there's all this fancy stuff. And I just said, like, what's your uncle do? And he's like a hedge fund guy or something like that. And I said, I'm thinking about my salary as a PT at the time, like coming out, like what you expected to make. And I was just like, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford any of that. Like you make like 60 grand coming out of school back when I graduated, and it just didn't make any sense to me. But that's where scarcity mindset became a thing of mine, because I was just like, I gotta make more money. I'm not gonna have enough money. I'm not gonna have enough money. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of the
Mhm.
first books. Like it sounds cliche if you're guys like you and I and you hear podcasts like this all the time, you're just like, oh yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad again. But that book really changed my whole outlook on money, on finances, on how to build a business and what building a business can really do for you. And it set me in this whole rabbit hole of like reading finance books, and then that led to real estate books and how to build wealth in real estate. And as I got older, and that became a more of a goal of like really getting into the real estate aspect of things. That's kind of that's our life plan now,
Mhm.
to kind of take our income and invest it in real estate. And we started doing that already, which is fantastic to do with your partner, obviously. But yeah, man, that's where scarcity mindset has led me more to an abundance mindset now. It really changed me. And then the other topic we said scarcity mindset versus you asked me where the growth mindset came from.
Yeah.
That definitely stemmed from the martial arts. I started training in Japanese jiu-jitsu when I was 14, and I was young, and it was all like the just traditional, not like right now, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu across the board. It's just known as the gentle art. And what Brazilian jiu-jitsu is now, wasn't blown up back then. So the traditional styles really, the traditional training like 3 to 4 hours a day, and that's how it started. It really humbles you, but they really instill the idea of slow gradual process, fundamentals, and how the martial arts are what I'll never forget this phrase. My instructor always said the martial arts are a microcosm of life. So like whatever you do on the mat in terms of growing from a white belt to a black belt, and that whole transition, just it's really analogous to what happens in your life when you put in the effort and you put in the hard work on the mat. And I found that to be true, and I think that really set up my foundation to tie in towards the whole growth process of my career, because the martial arts led me to physical therapy because I was so interested in anatomy, and then helping people, and it all kind of tied together. And it's funny where life takes you.
Yeah. I mean, I again another similarity. I not martial arts, but very, like sports. That's where I kind of got involved and really found myself in on to the beginning of the personal development kind of journey, and then connecting with teammates and things like that. And that got me interested in anatomy, and then studying kinesiology and in grad school for exercise science. And very similar path, but slightly different trail, I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
one of my friends, I don't know if you ever connected with Matt Ramos through Sean, but great dude. And he was on a podcast recently, and he talks about breadcrumbs. Like life will leave you breadcrumbs, and you just got to follow those breadcrumbs to. It sounds silly, right? Because it's people are like, oh, breadcrumbs. Like it's the truth. Like life will show you, the universe will show you different things. I mean, very brief story. When the day I applied to PT school, I was a waiter at Sam's Italian restaurant in Dobbs Ferry. It's kind of like I was there for 13 years. I worked my whole way through college there. And my guidance counselor from high school, I was in college, I just applied to PT school. My guidance counselor from high school walks into the restaurant. I haven't seen him in years. And he said, Nick, what are you doing? What are you up to? I haven't seen you in years. How's everything? And I was like, everything's great. I was like, it's funny I'm seeing you today. I was like, I just applied to PT school. And I was like, the irony of that, you know? And he just said, oh, that's awesome. He goes, where'd you apply? And I said, New York Medical College in Valhalla. He goes, oh, I want you to meet somebody I'm with. Long story short, he meets me, introduced me to this woman, Miriam. They sit down. She's, oh, I work at the college. She goes, yeah. And it's so funny. What are the odds? You know, you're applying there, I work there, whatever. So they sit down. They have their meal. I purposely didn't want to wait on the table because I didn't want to be like overbearing and want to talk to him and interrupt their conversation. And I remember at one point in the meal, I just went over to see how they were doing. And I happened to remember all four of their names, all three of them, him plus the three people. And they were like, oh, you remember my name? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Like it was just, they were humbled by that, where I was just part of my job. I was a waiter, I was a bartender. Like it was just good nature to do that.
Hmm.
And long story short, they get up at the end of the meal, and the woman, Miriam, who I had met, said to me, Nick, I just want to let you know, I've been observing you through the evening, interacting with your coworkers and your guests. And I just want to let you know, I'm the dean of admissions for New York Medical College, and actually in the School of Public Relations, which is the PT school. And I was just like, I was on an interview I didn't even know about. So it was wild. And she was like, I'm personally going to look at your application on Monday. And I was just blown away. I was dumbfounded. But it just goes to show you like the breadcrumbs in life, like he says, or just you never know what the universe is going to show you. And that for me was so gratifying because I was just like, I know for a fact I'm on the right path. And I didn't know it then. I was just like blown away. But as I got older, I reflected on that, and I was just like, there's no doubt this is what I was supposed to do in terms of what path I'm supposed to be on. So it was very,
Yeah.
very reassuring for sure.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. It gave me goosebumps when you were
Yeah,
saying that.
it's
That's
wild,
wild.
man. Wild
Um,
story.
yeah, that's a really great story too. I want to touch on something that you were kind of talking about previously. I wanted to get your take on it and kind of see where life is going because you had mentioned a little bit about the real estate, but I wanted to just recap. So, because you got into school and then you were working in the hospital, and that was like your main focus. And then your wife left, and then you started working a little bit on the private practice as like a side hustle almost,
Hmm.
until the side hustle took priority and you moved on to that. And now you're kind of getting into some renovations in real estate world as like a side hustle, correct? And you had said that that's kind of your longer term picture with your wife down the road, right?
Yeah. So going through like the rich dad poor dad theme to start, and then learning all the other finance stuff I started reading, and the real estate books. I don't know if you're familiar with Bigger Pockets. It's a real estate
Yep.
podcast, but I basically started reading their whole publishing, everything that they publish. I pretty much have read, and I just wanted to learn. And what we ended up deciding on, the fact that we would it would benefit to do take all of our income and put it into real estate. It's just one of the best things, and all the clients that we were seeing, a lot of them owned real estate, so I was kind of learning from them and picking their brains. But yeah, so my wife and I bought our first house actually when we were engaged. Well, just prior to being engaged, we got the house in 2021, and it was a two family. And then I couldn't swing a hammer before we bought a house. I couldn't do anything in terms of renovation or handy stuff. And then fortunately, I have some of the best friends in the world, and all of them are in trades. I was the only one that ended up in like healthcare and wellness. And I was asking them a million questions, and just, they're like, Nick, you're so annoying, man. Like, just like, you got to do this, you got to do that. You're a little in over your head here and whatever. My wife is brilliant. My father-in-law is a retired engineer, so like picking his brain and doing a lot of YouTubing and a lot of borrowing tools in the beginning. But we just started with small projects, and breaking down a wall. And my buddy's an iron worker; he threw in a beam, and watching and learning that process. And then we had a finished basement in our current home that we found out after we bought it, there was another legal kitchen down there. So it wasn't there when we bought the house. We just put it back. And now my best friend moved in downstairs. So we inherited a tenant upstairs. We live in the middle, and then our best friend is downstairs. So it was just a nice dynamic to start off in terms of what they call house hacking.
Hmm.
And that kind of really even sprung our interest even more into the real estate world. And then we just recently closed on our second two family, which is in Tuckahoe. That actually just got fully rented this month. So we renovated the whole thing from May through November. It was finished, and then it was rented by December. But that whole journey of we were so in over our heads with that property that like one thing happened after the other that we just had to learn how to handle the adversity and manage through it and make a million phone calls and who can fix this and can you do it? We did all the work ourselves in the beginning, just all the demo and learning how to get all these tools and how to exactly what to do with all the like just something as hard as how to get rid of all the demolition from the construction and how
Hmm.
to because the sanitation department doesn't take stuff like that, but like such a silly small problem of how to manage that and seeing the result and problem solving like the tile here and the hardwood floors and going through the exact project management. My wife, thank God, we balance each other out because she's definitely the brains behind the operation. But it definitely we are a good match, and we are very compatible in that sense because we balance each other out really well. But it's
I
been a
love
wild
that.
ride, man.
Sounds like you guys are a perfect team, and it's great because I can tell you're so resourceful, and I know you love learning. I don't know if we were talking about it on the recording or just prior, but you're a big time reader, trying to absorb as much content as possible, and that makes me want to ask, other than like Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad, who are some other kind of mentors of yours, other than like you said, your friends too, but who are some big people that you look up to, maybe in physical therapy world, real estate world, or just in life general?
In life in general, my personal life, my instructor in the martial arts was his name is Phil Villafane. He is just an amazing human being overall. But like he just through things that he's taught me on and off the mat, really kind of shaped my mindset in my personal life. Because teaching me that you have to be at peace with yourself before anything else. Before he once said to me, I was going through like a lot of different relationships, and I wasn't really they weren't working out. And he said to me one day, he was like, you really you have to be careful. You're a healer. You're a healer in your personal life, and you have to also be able to heal yourself because if you're not at peace with yourself and your mind, then you can't be with someone else that's going to be equally compatible. So that was like one little small journey I had to get through, and after a bad breakup, and then I eventually ended up with my wife, and it was the best advice I needed at that point in time. Um, but other like business and authors I look up to. I mean, Andrew Huberman is somebody who I've grown to learn. I don't know if you listen to his podcast a lot. He is a fantastic resource that you can learn so much information from. He's just a wealth of knowledge. And then I did in terms of the mindset stuff, like Ed Milet, Inky Johnson, like all these people that preach just mindset and goals and overcoming adversity because adversity is inevitable in life. And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of people try to avoid it. And that really has changed my entire outlook on life, especially with something as simple as cold plunging. People make a joke about like, oh, you get in cold water every morning. What are you out of your mind? And they don't see the benefit of it because they just think you're crazy, and they just think like you're doing it to act like you could do something hard, and it's not to prove like now once you do it a couple of times and it becomes a
Yeah,
practice, it's not about I do it because it's hard, right? But I don't do it just to tell other people that I do it. I do it because of the way it makes me feel and the way it sets my mind for the day. Because it's literally to do something that difficult every day and you stay and force yourself to be uncomfortable. When something does happen in life that is adversity that you didn't expect, you're going to be able to manage that and the anxieties that come along with that event, you're going to be able to manage it much easier.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that, man. That's like pure gold. Because I do very similar stuff. I cold plunge as much as I can, and I love the challenge of it. Not to go around and tell everybody that I'm Mr. Tough Guy and I do these hard, difficult things, but because I want to prove to myself that I can do it, and I want to own that, being able to challenge myself and get better at it. And I don't do it every day. I cold plunge in the Long Island Sound on the weekends, and I finish
Oh,
off
cool.
my showers with cold blast towards the end. But if you're doing it every single day, don't you eventually
Yeah,
need to progress and get a little bit harder? Or how do you take that to the next
I
level?
I do it 5 to 7 days a week, and we, I have a good crew of friends that also are in it, especially two of my close friends, including Sean, who connected us. They've really gotten into it as a daily practice, and that also helps me because when it's 4:30 in the morning and you're outside and it's freezing in New York, at least in Connecticut, like up in the East Coast in general, the Northeast, you don't have to try in the winter. You don't have to go out and buy ice and do that. It's just cold. Like it's just
Hmm.
ridiculous. But now, when you have the thermometer in there every morning and it's like 31 degrees in the water, and you're looking at this and you procrastinate, it's so funny what it teaches about your mind and the resilience of it. Because when I'm looking at that thermometer and or I'm thinking about it when I wake up, oh, I got to jump in. There is not a single day that I am like, I know I'm going to feel phenomenal after, but that procrastination and what your mind will do to avoid the discomfort. And that's exactly what we do in everything else that we don't want to do in life. It's the same exact thing. So it's
Hmm.
really like, for me, how do I progress it? The progress is in the consistency, because if you can continue to do that as a daily practice or 5 days a week, whatever your goal may be, but at a frequency that is feasible and practical for you, that you notice a difference, that is so practical to life. Because going back to that discomfort thing, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. I'm sorry. I just can't get over that. It's so powerful to me that once you force yourself to do something uncomfortable, everything is in life gets a lot easier when those adversities come.
Dude, like preaching to the choir. That's what I believe in. It's literally the first step with coaching with my clients. Get
Yeah,
them training, get them out of their comfort zone. They got to do some difficult things. Cold plunge is definitely one of them. I'm a big fan of waking up early. Nobody likes getting up out of bed when they don't need to at such an early hour, but I
sure,
do
man. I
it
see you at
just to keep
3:30.
going and get my things. Yeah, yeah, you see
Yeah,
it.
I see those
So
3:30
there's
posts, and I'm just like, dude, this guy gets it, man. Because I read the 5 a.m. Club is one of my favorite books, and Robin Sharma. I don't know if you've ever read it, but he basically
yeah.
takes the benefits of waking up at 5 a.m. and puts it into a nice short story narrative that makes it powerful and really teaches you those principles and how they are applicable to life and why they'll make you better. And I did 75 hard once. I'm sure you're familiar with that program. Um,
Yep.
but those two, reading that book and doing 75 hard, literally changed my entire lifestyle, because it was just doing difficult things, and to do it for that consistency, it changed how much I drank, or how little I drink, I should say, from now. And it just made me feel better overall as a person. And you mentioned, I just want to comment on this. You said that's how you start with all your clients in terms of doing something uncomfortable and then strength training. Besides what we do in our respective careers, obviously, like, strength training is a part of our thing. But for the average person in this country as a whole, like, strength training is just like absent. It is just not a thing that people want to do. And again, that goes back to that whole thing about it's very uncomfortable to do, especially consistently, and to do it well. It's just not an easy thing to do, and everybody tries to avoid that. So you're just constantly kicking the ball down the road, and it's
Hmm.
it's really that's another thing that just taught me so much. Just consistently strength training, and I was always into working out, but I was never as aggressive about it and so disciplined about it. But now I've kind of made sure to, like, even talking about it is just so powerful with other people trying to spread that.
Yeah. Yeah, and strength training it's double discomfort. I'd like to kind of think about, because one, it's uncomfortable moving your body in different ways that you're maybe not used to. You get sore as hell when you first starting out, but then also
Mhm.
the psychological discomfort, like getting into the gym, seeing other people, like not 100% sure you know what you're doing. You don't want to look like a
Sure.
fool or hurt yourself. So just going to the gym and just starting something is pays in dividends because it builds you on that mental resiliency and then also that physical resiliency.
Yeah,
So,
no question. And for me, I mean, like I think I mentioned before, I work with a very unique population, especially
mhm,
when I was at Sinai. I like most of my patients are paralyzed in some way or another. So for me, hearing them and working with them, all these people want to do is move more. So
yeah,
to when you have, I think when something like that happens and you've met someone that is gone through an adversity like that, like true adversity, physical limitations, and this traumatic injury that has changed their life indefinitely, they're looking to strength train and they want to move and they just want to move their body in whatever capacity. And I think, it humbled me so much. And you take life for granted because your patients teach you and your clients, I'm sure, teach you so much. And for me, they not only taught me the aspect of what true resilience is just by overcoming their injuries, but it's just even more humbling. Like, I can go out and do a regular workout, like as an able-bodied person, but other people need modifications and adaptations. And that to me is true perseverance when they're able to actually do that and overcome that adversity through exercise essentially and getting stronger. So it was really like kind of full circle for me because it all that strength training and resilience training that I do is also applicable to the patient population I work with primarily. So
yeah. Man, it sounds like a great cycle you got there with motivation, inspiration from your clients, and you got like circle of just progress moving forward. I love it. It's good stuff. Um, and so circling back a little bit, I started to kind of get into asking, but then I think I kind of veered off a little bit. But as you're going and now you're kind of getting into more of the real estate world and the renovations as you're kind of growing the private practice, what does the future kind of goals look like? Are you looking to grow the practice and then hire a bunch of other PTs under you and go more full-time into real estate and growing that side of things? Or are you looking to eventually build up a new branch of something else, another side hustle? Or what's on the horizon for you guys?
we currently have a couple of PTs that work with us as independent contractors. We're kind of scaling that gradually. We are really being very specific about who we work with because we want the best clinicians to offer our current patients as well as new
Mm-hmm.
patients. And also, you're going into someone's home. Like, I'm not going to send somebody that isn't competent and doesn't really have the skill set needed to work with that person. So we do have a couple of PTs, and we're working on scaling that to include OTs and speech therapists down the road. We're actually talking to our attorney and things like that now to kind of restructure our current business. But I'd say the goal isn't to work more actively. The goal is to set systems in place so that we can, as we age, we can start to scale back and work because we want to, not work because we have to. So I'd say real estate is really the long-term goal. So right now, if it was, 75% in the PT side of things and 25% real estate, I would say we try to reverse that going,
Mm-hmm.
years down the road. Excuse me. I love what I do. I love being a PT. It's just I've realized that the traditional model of PT of the 9 to 5 just doesn't gradually build wealth unless you're just investing in the stock market constantly and you're good at it. But for me, for my goals and the desire to spend more time with my family and my wife, and it's just for me, my goals are very different. I want that time in the future, and I mean I want that time now, but I'm willing to sacrifice some of that time now to have more later. So and I we are both big believers that that happens with the power of real estate, and the math makes sense. If you study it, it makes sense, and that's where our goals are right now. And who knows, that's always changing, but that's what we're looking at going into 2024.
Love it. And I know we touched on a little bit about books, and I'd like to ask, like, you just picked up the Hidden Potential book too, right? Recently?
Yes, I picked up Hidden Potential. I have not dug into that yet. I just picked up Morgan Housel's book, Same as Ever, which is good. I'm also reading The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter,
Mm-hmm.
which is very applicable to all the things that we are talking about right now because the essential principle of it is like people are so comfortable and when adversity strikes, it's like they don't know how to handle it or the anxieties that come with that. They just don't know how to manage that. So those are definitely two books I would recommend so far. Morgan Housel's
What was
book
that
is
one
the
again?
first book I loved called The Psychology of Money. That is a phenomenal book. Actually, I have a copy of it here. But this is phenomenal. I highly recommend this book.
Huh, nice. Have you read The Power of One More by Ed Milet? I know you mentioned his name
Love it.
earlier.
Love Ed Milet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I was copying and pasting quotes from that book the whole time I was reading it. Man, that book is so powerful. I like Ed a lot. Some people he's a little too intense for. Like he feel my wife's like, why is he yelling at me? Why is he yelling at me? And I'm just like, it's intense. But the principles they get through to you. You know, it's very powerful. Like the
Yeah.
messages that he sends, and he has interviewed like a couple of spinal cord patients, and the gentleman Eric
Uh,
Legrand from Rutgers, like he was on his show, and a lot of that stuff resonates with me. Very powerful.
yeah. Yeah. I love Ed. I met him down in North Carolina last year. He said I was a pretty attractive looking dude, and he gave me a good thumbs up. So
That's
it's
always a
funny,
plus.
funny
There you
little
go from Ed
story.
Milet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, so I do want to be courteous of time. I know we're kind of getting through there. What do you got working on other than the renovations and stuff like that? Any big projects or anything?
We just finished this one renovation, and my buddy, I have a lot of tools now from doing all that stuff. And my buddy was like, "Can I borrow this? Can I borrow that?" And I was like, "Listen, we don't plan on doing anything in DIY for like the next 4 to 6 months. We want to just take a break and do that. We are going to focus on just taking probably like a couple of weeks, and just we're actually going out to Whistler to go skiing for a little bit, and then we're going to take the next going into the new year, make a nice transition. But in terms of projects, we're definitely looking for the next property, but that's why we want to take a little bit of a breather before we do that, because we know it's going to be just another tie up of our time. Plus, with trying to scale the business, and we're looking for referral sources and more patients always in like Westchester and New York. So where the goal is to help more people, period. To be able to, and I'm not trying to sound like the good Samaritan, because obviously we are a business, but the more people we help, the money kind of comes, right? That's just the way karma works. So if
Yeah,
we're able to provide that service and to help more people with various orthopedic and neurological issues, then that's what we want to do. So whether it's us working with that person personally, or whether it's one of our, great therapists that we have, we're putting together an amazing team, and we're very proud of that team, and we value each and every one of them. So if that can continue to grow and get bigger as we grow without getting out of control, and the goal is to not grow too fast either, right? You want to be humble and grow together, and also just learn along the way, because that's the most important part.
nice. And just to be clear, you working with all kinds of patients who are in the physical therapy world. Doesn't need to just be the individuals who are paralyzed or suffered spinal injuries, or is that your specialty?
That is definitely something we specialize. I specialize in spinal cord injury. My wife specializes in brain injury and stroke. But a lot of our current patients have a variety of orthopedic ailments. I mean, we treat so many joint replacements. If somebody had a total knee replacement and they're looking for somebody to come to their house, hip replacement, same thing. Low back surgery, whatever it may be. From the most general of surgeries that are elective in nature to traumatic injuries that people are trying to recover from and just get better and move better and become more independent.
Cool. So wide range of people there. Um, that's awesome, dude. And so, if people are interested in reaching out and seeking some of your help, how do they find you, or how do they get in touch with you?
You can email me, Nick Manente, NickManente .dpt@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram too at NickDPT. Pretty simple. And you can shoot me a DM.
Boom, make it nice and easy for everybody.
Absolutely.
Before I let you go, again, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a lot of things going on right now, and it's awesome to connect with such cool people, and it's a great conversation. I really love this. But before you go, I got to ask you, if you were to boil it all down, all the information that you know, and you were to give one piece of advice to help somebody survive the side hustle, what would that one piece be?
Um, if I had to sum it down in one sentence, I would say always remain humble, stay true to yourself, and have faith that the process is going to just come to fruition. It's going to lead to the goal that comes to fruition, because so many people are going to tell you so many different things, and you're not going to do this, you can't do that, you're going to burn yourself out, you're going to do it. And like, you just have to take that with a grain of salt and just believe in whatever your ultimate goal is, because it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what anybody thinks. It matters what works for you and what you prove to yourself.
Oh man, so true. So true, dude. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and looking forward to connecting more with you in the future, and hopefully have you on the podcast again down the road for a second episode.
Likewise, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later. Peace, peace, peace.
Take care, brother.